Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, college football fans, maybe a little bit of college softball fans. I'll get to that in a minute, but college football fans across the nation and around the world. This is Tim May with yet another The Tim May Show. And right there, you see my co-pilot, my compadre, a guy I love to shoot the bull with. I wish we were recording before we started this thing, but Matt Wilhelm, welcome once again to the Tim May Show. It's actually the Tim May Show with Matt Wilhelm.
There you go. Yeah, I like that. Great to be with you as always. And, always very nice to do this on a Monday morning after a Buckeye victory.
Dude, not just a Buckeye victory. This was, I don't care who they were playing. They could have been playing air on Saturday night in Ohio Stadium. Rarefied air is what it was because they stomped that team. I picked Ohio State to win 56-3. Ohio State scored 56. Western Michigan missed their one shot at a field goal, which would have made me not just uncanny, but a genius. I'm back into that just rarely intelligent kind of guy because of this. But Matt, as this team heads into this open date is what it is. It's not a bye because it's not a tournament. You might get a bye in the first round of the college football playoff, but this is an open date, an off week. What is your take on this team after the offense has scored over 50, they've scored over 50 points each of the first 2 weeks, have given up 6 points over the first 2 weeks, beaten those teams the way they were supposed to beat them, and did beat them. And this, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, was a Western Michigan team that was coming off a close game at Wisconsin. Actually had the lead going into the fourth quarter at Wisconsin in the opener the week before. Wow. I mean, I think this team's for real. Go ahead.
Oh, no problem. I think and that's what I was actually going to point out was from a quality standpoint of this opponent, taking for granted they had, I don't say Wisconsin on the ropes, but as you said, the lead late, at Camp Randall, a newer, younger, kind of like transformative head football coach at Western Michigan who's trying to revitalize them in the MAC, who, and in some cases might have shot their shot against Wisconsin.
Right.
Then you give Ohio State a week to prepare for them. We're the superior football team, and we just executed. I think what I loved most, and I think it was a point of emphasis for Coach Day between week 1 and week 2 following the Akron game was starting fast. And so we started fast on both sides of the football. No turnovers, but 3 and outs, limiting them, keeping them behind the sticks defensively, giving the football back to us. And I think we saw, and I love that it's happening early, just some of the synergy of Will Howard and this offense. I thought the offensive line played better. They were a little bit more, and I'll give Akron some credit. Their defense was significantly ahead of where their offense was, and maybe why those first half struggles or early season games, you're always kind of figuring out who you're going to block and are you going to get the looks that you prepare for based on what you know about them from last year.
Yeah.
So this week we were able to study Western Michigan, following their Wisconsin loss. And I think we just had them dead to rights. We knew who they were. We schemed them appropriately. We're more skilled. We were able to get guys open. And I think that's when I look at the stat sheet, in preparation, following the football game. And then, of course, in preparation, to come on here and speak to you all and speak with you, Tim, it's just, Junkins over 100. And I think, averaging 12 yards a carry, another 65, 70-yard touchdown called back.
Yeah.
That should have been a second. I love there's a thunder. It's almost like a lightning and a bigger lightning.
Yeah. Because that's the best way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah. Because one's bigger than the other. Right. But Junkins, and by no means is like thunder. Right. He's lightning as well. They're just very different. And I think, I love the usage of both, getting them both close to double-digit carries. I think for a lot of people, what we're seeing out of Jeremiah Smith is everything we thought he would be. So as we get in, what I want to see is as we get into Big Ten play, and I don't believe there's going to be, this massive hiccup. If anything, it'd probably be a schematic hiccup, not necessarily like a freshman, football player hiccup. Is as the quality of corners and the layering of the defense and the more intricate defenses, again, and that's why I also said last week, going to see Iowa. Iowa's going to be a great defense. Iowa's going to be hyper disciplined. Are they going to be the best athletes in the world? No, but they're going to play in scheme. They're going to challenge us. They're going to be gritty. They're going to be nasty. They're going to hit as a stepping stone that's in front of us on our way to that massive matchup against against Oregon. And I also think like the talent pool that we'll see at Michigan State and what challenge that will represent for our offensive front, who they're going to be offensively, challenging our defense, really battle testing us ahead of that big matchup against Oregon, in probably 4 weeks from now.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's
5 weeks.
coming October 12th, ladies and gentlemen. Circle your calendar if you haven't already. And if you haven't already gotten hotel reservations, good luck. But I digress. Bottom line is, this team has jumped out the way I thought it would. I asked Chip Kelly last week, by the way, in the press conference. They did a little bit of a luxury, and you touched on it. You got to see what Western Michigan was all about defensively because they changed up a lot of things defensively from last year. Wisconsin took the brunt of that, Meanwhile, Ohio State schemed it, took care of the blitzing, and then took care of business up front, which was interesting. By the way, I want to make sure people understand at the end of this conversation today, I'm going to have an interview with Kieran Kumar, who's the new softball coach at Ohio State, because as you and I were talking about again before we came on the air, if that's what you call this, got on the digital waves here. I like that sound better, digital waves. There's no reason Ohio State can't be good in every sport, an upper echelon, if not at the top of the Big Ten. And that's why you make changes like Ross Bjork has done, bringing in Kieran Kumar from Miami of Ohio to lead a softball program. When around Cleveland area, Matt, there's big time softball played in this state by the girls.
Oh yeah,
by the women.
There absolutely is. That's the one thing that I was always, as a Buckeye and, from 99 to 2002, it was, men's and women's hoops. We've seen like what women's hoops is represented. The basketball team, has their ups and has their downs, more ups than downs. Nick Swisher playing baseball, when there was a Buckeye, right? So the Buckeye baseball team, challenging for the College World Series year in, year out. The lacrosse team, of course, the wrestling team. And I think it's, I think at a time when I was there was 36 varsity sports.
There
and
still
I'm
are.
sure that
still
very, very high. Women's field hockey, and in this case, women's softball, the track and field, and their representation, and the Big Ten conference championships that are televised nationally that you tune into, and there's always an immense amount of pride when you see Buckeye sports athletes. I mean, again, men's and women's tennis, men's and women's golf. It's like there's an immense amount of pride you have. So many people think Ohio State and only think football, but if you step away from that and open up, the sports landscape at Ohio State, there's been upgrades and there's been some downturns, but it was Gene Smith and now Ross Bjork, constantly trying to find the right leader to resurge whatever sport is in a little bit of a downturn. And I think in your case, again, we're going to learn a lot about the women's softball here, and again, it's the best of the best is only to be expected in Columbus, Ohio, at Ohio State.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, Ty Tucker with the tennis program has shown you can be elite, not just good, but elite at Ohio State, and not necessarily be located in the South. I mean, the men's golf team this past year, vying for the NCAA championship, right on down the line. And like I said, there's so much quality softball played in this state. I didn't want to get off on this tangent before I got to her, but there's so much quality softball played in this state. I've known guys who've, their girls have grown up to be college softball players who went elsewhere instead of Ohio State. And I'm not saying you get all your players from Ohio, but there's really no excuse not to be at least among the elite in the Big Ten. And that's what Ross Bjork seeks for them. I wanted to ask you this. As a former, I'm trying to remember, in 2002, did you guys have an off week, an off date? I'm trying to remember.
I think,
I should have looked that up before I got into
it. At one point. I think we did at one point, but we did play the kickoff. As we talked about, we played in that kickoff classic,
Eddie Robinson Classic, whatever it was. Yeah.
Rolled right into Washington State, so some early challenges, and I think we didn't, but maybe not at the college level, but college is so much more like pro ball now, and there's a bye or two at the NFL level, And I think this, and sometimes you always kind of like, and from an NFL landscape, it's like, where does our buy come? An early buy allows you to kind of like self scout and get better for like the long haul. In some cases, you want one kind of right in the middle because you've played, say 6 to 10 games, your bodies are a little banged up and you need a week off of like no banging,
Yeah.
let your brain rest a little bit, also self scout and get some recovery. But I think for us, with Marshall coming, next, which is another team that will be challenging, and I think they challenged Virginia Tech over the weekend for most of a first half. I think there'll be a significant upgrade from our first two opponents in Akron and Western Michigan coming out of the Sun Belt Conference. So it'll be a little bit different, and I think they'll, but it'll be interesting to see. As I said, Ryan Day talked about the fast start. We got the fast start. How this team, and because they're so veteran laden and intertwined with an injection of young players playing early, it would not surprise me for them to be hyper focused and kind of keep their nose to the grindstone, keep working and not take their foot off the pedal all that much. So that when Ryan Day says we need to, let's keep that momentum, let's start fast again. Because you're relying on so many guys that have, kind of been through the ringer, either other places or, in a Buckeye uniform, that it's not a surprise that they're going to take a very business professional type of mentality towards this bye week, recover their body, focus on school, focus on fixing some of the things, that we need to. And also, I would say, I do know we have another open date in the schedule, if I'm not mistaken.
Right after Oregon. Yeah.
Right after Oregon is you kind of tinker with things in your bye week. So things that might have showed up on film and you're like, ooh, what if we did that? Like you added a motion or you added a shift, or if Howard recognizes a specific coverage and instead of doing this with the football, he does this with the football. And I think it also maybe allows, Justin Fry to maybe, if he's not completely happy, tinker with someone else in a lineup along that front. So there's a lot of little, and I don't want to say tinker because you're not trying to like tinker too much, but you can monkey with things right now to see what gives you the best. It's like an opportunity. Like it's almost like, I hate to say this, nothing to discredit Western Michigan and Akron. Like those were almost like two preseason games, the way that it all played out for us, scoring 50 plus points, coming off of a shutout, less than 100 yards on offense out of Western Michigan, over 600, for our offense. You would go, whoa, there's not a lot to fix. Well, you're going to see better competition. And so I would see that would probably be the kind of the agenda for what the next 10 days look like for Ohio State.
What in your mind, what is the definition of a total dominant defensive performance? But when you shut out a team, they don't score a point. Number one, that's good. It gives you at least a 50% chance of winning.
Yeah.
Well, maybe 80%. But number two, but you hold them under 100 yards. I forgot the number of 3 and outs they forced, but it was ridiculous.
3-15 on third down. So, you're, and I'll say this, Western Michigan never was on schedule, never had the first down completed pass to get into 2nd and 6. They never had the 4-yard run to get into 2nd and 6. So they were in 2nd and 10, 2nd and 8 plus for most of the game. You play great defense on 2nd down. They're probably in 3rd and 7 plus predominantly. And first of all, that's a hard down and distance to move the chains on. And then when you're going against such a talented defense like we have with playmakers across the board, makes it it's like you're like in a vice, like you're in a phone booth. Makes it very, very hard. So a couple of things, like you said, to keep the goose egg and have them not score is something that doesn't happen very often anymore. And so to have that, there's an immense amount of pride. I think the other benchmark that you talked about was the under 100 yards. A lot of these guys might have never done this in an Ohio State uniform ever before until, this date, or probably been darn close in the past in some matchups. The one other thing that I will say but in this situation, because of the so little success offensively out of Western Michigan, was you look at, there's 0 turnovers, right? You'd love to have, I'm just thinking defensive coordinator, defensive coach mindset, defensive players. It's like, you want to hunt the football.
Wasn't perfect. Yeah.
Right. That's the peanut punches. That's the strips. That's the, sack, force, fumble. That's the forcing overthrows, tips and overthrows is where you get interceptions. But they were so like hamstrung.
Yeah.
The ball was really never in peril, in it because of a lack of a competitive situation. But that's, when you look at the stat sheet, that's the one thing that I would jump out and go, it's like, okay, we did this, awesome, we did that, awesome. Zero under 100 yards. It's like, turnovers. We did get the sacks. You love to see, Jack Sawyer. I don't know how this happens, come almost unblocked,
Yeah.
to get a sack on the backside. So there's again a lot to build on, a lot of success, and I just don't think out of this group, and I know that we probably feel the same way, that all of this is going to go to their head to the point where they're going to relax.
Yeah.
And that has so much to do with the unfinished business mentality that this, a lot of these seniors and the guys that have come back, and Coach Day and his staff has, kind of like, on their minds and on their hearts because of what the last few years have been like towards the end.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you, because it's such a veteran team. We were talking about this on LettermenRow.com on a video we did. It's such a veteran team, and it shows. And I'm talking about veteran, even in the backups. When Denzel Burke gets thrown out of the game I've never seen a guy have targeting called against him when he's the one who gets hit in the side of the helmet.
Right.
That was,
Yeah.
I still don't understand that call. And I think it was wrong. I'm not, that was why you wear helmets. That's why they invented helmets in the first place, before people started using it as a weapon to protect you when there's an incidental moment. That to me was an incidental moment. If anything, it was on the ball carrier's plate for the fact of lowering his head and hitting Denzel on the side of the head. How they ended up being Denzel Burke being disqualified, but who went in for him? Jermaine Matthews, who could be starting anywhere almost in the country. Or that's the depth that this team is dealing with. I've been telling people about all summer. Do they have the greatest players ever at their positions across the board? No, but the depth they've got, the proven depth they've got, came to the fore again when they put guys in there like you talking about in the second half. It was the same mentality. Finish the game, finish the shutout, finish the game offensively. Both quarterbacks who went in played extremely well, had big moments. Devin Brown followed by Julian Sayin.
And
that's impressive, right?
It is absolutely impressive, and I think that's a testament to a few things. Is and I'll say this like slightly egotistically, like, we're Ohio State. We're recruiting, top 5 classes every year. Do all these prospects hit? No. And we can name as many players that don't hit as players that do, right? That's just the college football landscape. But to go out and get the talent pool and I keep like layering this roster with talent. And I think it's also, to a certain extent, I don't say why I love this. Some other teams might go, okay, well, Michigan played Texas this week, right? Or who else? I mean, Clemson played somebody tough last week, right?
Yeah.
And these early tough games, like the
Clemson,
new Big
Georgia,
tough enough, right?
Yeah.
That this allows us to see those players play football, not just practice, not just in skivvies running around the Woody Hayes indoor facility, like, doing change of direction drills and running 40s and bench pressing in the gym. You get them to actually go out and play football. And I think that's what's refreshing about this game. Will Howard goes out and does what he does. The two backs go out and do what they do. Then you see the People's Kid, you see Devin Brown, you get Julian Sayin in there, throws a touchdown. You get to see a lot. And I think it's also for Buckeye Nation, you get to see a lot of the guys that, there's been a lot of talk about. There's a lot of guys that, have come back. There's a lot of guys that are in recruiting classes that have probably received a significant amount of money, and they want to see a little ROI and see these guys, in small little snippets, see if they can handle playing football at Ohio State. Because that's, I think, also, like, it's because the roster's so competitive. You get 4-star guys, in between 2 other 4-star, 5-star guys at a specific position, and one guy just like it just never clicks.
Yeah.
Because you're bookended by great players. So, you're in a competitive situation every single practice, every single year. And that's why sometimes, guys, it's just, we're not the place for them. They want to go play football, or you don't see them until they're a red shirt senior or a red shirt junior. They just been buried, on a roster. So it's a testament to Coach Day to go out and get these kids. It's a testament to their development, which I think is, the massive word associated with Ohio State. and getting them ready to play, at Ohio State in the Horseshoe and on the road in the Big Ten, but then also have them compete for a national championship in most cases almost every year, and then like walking them into their NFL opportunities, like ready to play and contribute professionally as well.
Yeah, I like that analogy though, the layers, because it's literally like Ryan Day and his staff, especially on the recruiting side of things and the retention side of things. That brings the NIL into play, obviously, but also guys hungry, pardon the expression, to get something they haven't had when they're in their experience at Ohio State, which is hardware, rings and trophies. The last 3 years have been a desert. But it's kind of like they built this really nice lasagna, and
Yeah.
and these first several games they're baking it, and it really came. You
It
really
does.
saw
Again,
the
here's the thing. This is the one thing that and again, we talked about this a little before we jumped on, but like the new college landscape is a, you know, 14, 15, 16 game season. And so to have these guys that you've recruited and you've really only seen in practice get this early game experience, like some of these corners and some of these, I'll call it say backup receivers, to be able to play a quarter or two in scheme. Can they break the huddle? Can they get lined up? Can they shift in motion and then do what they're being asked to do, whether that's block on the outside on a stretch play or run the right routes and be in phase, with the quarterback. So
catch the
that
football. Yeah.
yeah, catch the football. But it's like it's a long season. Is every starter that started these first two football games going to be healthy throughout the whole season? Highly likelihood not.
Right.
So then or those you're going to call upon those layered guys to be next.
Yeah.
And they're not going to bat an eye because
yeah.
they're battle tested because they practice against some of the best players in the country every day against themselves, and then they've got these little early exposures to like real life game, energy, juice, adrenaline, intensity that will have them ready for when they're called upon later in the football season.
Yeah, and four out of five of the starters on the offensive line returned this year.
Right.
But you know what? The last 2 weeks, they're the middle of their offensive line. Austin Searveld, at left guard, Seth McLaughlin, who played the last 2 seasons, started the last 2 seasons for Alabama at center, and then Tegra Shabola started at right guard. They played some other guys in there. Thought a guy looked really good. For example, on Saturday night was Luke Montgomery. But the thing about it is they've had guys rise already because obviously Donovan Jackson wasn't available the first 2 weeks, and that's invaluable. I mean, that's not an overuse of that word. That's invaluable. The experience on Austin Searveld has gotten the first 2 weeks, right?
It is. And I think it's also, maybe for the current year, and I know that we're trying to attempt to, and I'm sure in years coming, I think there's, there might be University of Texas home and home. There might be University of Alabama home and home in future years. But in this year, there isn't. And so again, I'm not trying to take anything away from anybody, but there's a preseason type of feel where if we go out and play good, we're going to roll whoever we play. I'm not taking any money line. I'm not a sports bettor, but we're going to go roll them, and we're going to be superior, from a talent standpoint. And it just allows you to go out and execute. And I'm sure, Ryan Day and then the coaching staff in certain situations, he'd probably like to have a play call or two, back. Given a certain situation where they didn't execute something that he thought would work, or Chip Kelly in this case. So that's what these. It's like dress rehearsal, the wedding's gonna happen. No one's gonna run away from the altar. It's gonna it's all gonna be like commensurate. But like you go out and do this ahead of like these big things that are coming, and I think up to this point. Offensively, a little slow start in the first game to be expected. Point of emphasis for the coach was not, an issue in game 2, and they just kept the pedal to the metal. And those layers played and produced. They looked very comfortable. And I think we're on an uptick. And I said, this is not the team that's going to relax in an open date, and will probably come out against Marshall very, very hungry to continue their success.
Yeah. You obviously played in the NFL on a Super Bowl team. What is the key for an individual in an off week? Off as in they don't play, but obviously, you were listening on Saturday night after the game. I mean, Ryan Day said, this isn't the off week is coming after Oregon. This week, he wants to just keep the pedal to the metal from a work standpoint
Yeah.
and things like that. What is the key for an individual player to keep that focus? If you understand what I'm saying, I mean, because everybody wants a break. I mean, they've been going at it since the 1st of August from a preseason camp all the way through the first 2 weeks of the season. So what is, from an individual standpoint, what is the key for that individual to keep his mind straight?
I would say it's following their routine, whatever their game week routine is, and I think that's where Coach Day will attempt to do is to keep
Yes.
them. It's like, whatever their bulk in pads work days are going to be, they're going to be their bulk in full pad work days. They're not going to be just in helmets at a walkthrough tempo. So that's what he's going to attempt to do as a head football coach from a 10,000 foot view down structurally. And then each individual, it's like, if you have a recovery day, it's still your recovery day. If it's an off day, do you go in and watch film? You still go in and watch film, and in some cases for some of these guys, it's like, you're still going to school. They are student athletes. But you don't skip a beat. If every Thursday night, the offensive linemen get together and they all eat Chipotle on Thursday night, you all get together, you eat Chipotle. It's you just don't, and I don't know that if Coach Day, if he's truly going to say, keep the pedal to the metal, is he going to give the guys any time off, meaning like days off? The one thing that could change is, kids, especially within, call it say 4 to 6 hours, may attempt to go home over the weekend and see their parents and be in home and sleep in their at-home beds. I hope the guys that are out of state don't jump on planes, and fly home, because it's just, the logistics sometimes and the geographics associated with traveling and flying is finicky in today's world.
Especially with a hurricane rolling into town,
all that
later in the week. Yeah, I'm with you.
So, but I would say play things a little close to the vest.
Yeah.
Stay on schedule, stay disciplined, stay in your routine, because again, but also say, like, slightly mentally, like, relax and get to watch some of the other games, on the weekend, that sometimes because you're playing one, you never get to. So, check out your competition. And again, if you're hanging with your buddies, hang with your buddies. If you're a little bit of a loner, you're a loner. Just stay in your routine and again, keep your eyes on the prize.
Hey, one thing I wanted to ask you too, and you touched on it a minute ago. The competition that's in practice at Ohio State now, because of those layers we were talking about, you came in, you had to fight your way into playing time and stuff. On the actual practice field, do you if you're really intent on playing, do you feel pressure all the time, that one rep you get or those 4 reps in a row you get? What is it like for the player? Because obviously, they now have psychological help for these players. Mental health is a huge deal, especially in Ryan Day's time. It started, really way back when, but really upticked with Urban Meyer bringing in, making sure these folks had help. I mean, but I remember there were players back in the way back in the early 90s and stuff. I mean, Kirk Herbstreit has talked about that when he was a player at Ohio State. But how do you, what kind of stress is there on a player who is trying to be that guy, has all this pressure from back home to be that guy, and yet he's still not, because of the depth of the roster and maybe his position, he's still not getting that, big time playing time. What is he dealing with on a daily basis in that regard?
It is, again, they do have the support. There's no doubt about that. I think you have to marry up the on paper effect, because again, a lot of all these guys are coming in as highly touted, high school football recruits, 3 stars and above, and all they've ever known is massive success. And then you get to a place like Ohio State and you're not the dude all of a sudden, right? So, but on paper, there's this, like, he's got high upside, his speed, his attributes, his this, he did this. And then you get out there and you're just like, oh, you're one of everyone in your wide receiver room, went for 1,500 yards or more and 20 touchdowns in high school. And now you've got to compete. So, and I would say it's not really defeating, and you kind of have to understand the process. The process is basically, you take your off season, and marry that with the on paper evaluation, and do those coincide? And then the coaches have to construct, like a depth chart, right? Where are we going to start camp? Where are our ones? Okay, who are our twos? Who are our threes? And if you've been around football long enough, the ones and twos get the lion's share of the reps while there's those competition battles, unless the ones are clearly the ones. But usually ones and twos are competing. Threes are essentially competing to become a two, to enter the competition. And how does that happen? That is attention to detail and your ability to pick up the structure and the playbook that you've been given to learn offensively and defensively. And then how quickly can you transfer that from classroom, walkthrough, and then do it at full speed against the great players that we have? I would also say the drills that you do. So that's the one thing I even do at the high school level as a coach is like, I just don't, well, not, it's a lot like a college atmosphere. You don't just do drills to do drills. You do drills that transfer. You do drills that make you better at things you're going to do at full speed against another human. Like, and I would also say from a protective standpoint, especially in the NFL, but I know that good, or ones versus ones happens a lot at schools like Ohio State because it helps you keep your edge.
Yeah.
Is the competitive situation. So whether it's one rep, and there was some pressure when you're only getting a rep or two of practice that it has to be perfect. It has to be physical. You have to do things exactly the way the coaches want it. Otherwise, you might not get those 1 or 2 opportunities.
Yeah.
I do think if you're in a rotation where you're getting, 4 to 10 plays of practice, I'm not, by no means do you relax, but it's business. I'm just doing my job on those 4 plays or 10 plays over and over and over again. And here's the last thing that I'll say when it comes to, do you have to have talent, speed, physicality, all those other things? Yes. But the one word that I would associate from high school, college, pro is trust. Can a coach trust you to go out there and line up and do what you're asked to do in a specific call, whether that's 1 play or 50 plays. Yeah. And those are the guys, you have to have immense athletic ability and strength and all those other things. We all know that. But can I trust you to execute? Can I trust you, to play press man against their number 1 receiver? Can I trust you that you're going to make the kickout block against, the 5-star defensive end against Penn State or Chop Robinson, whoever, whatever, right? Yeah. And I trust you. Can I trust Will Howard with the football 33 times in a football game, and I think that's where Kyle McCord couldn't trust him, consistently to make the throws, to make the decisions consistently enough at an Ohio State level, which is why he's balling at Syracuse, right? Yeah. Devin Brown, it's all trust. Can you go out and execute, damn close to the expectation that we call winning at Ohio State, which is higher than many other places around the country. Yeah.
And you start building your portfolio the first day you step onto campus, right? I mean, of why they should trust you. And
30% of it's passing the eye test.
Yeah.
Even recruiting, I love a kid. He's a 3-star. He's a 4-star. You get him on campus. He's like, oh, he's not as tall as I thought he was. His legs are a little skinny. He looks kind of flat-footed. You see how he's walking?
Yeah. He's slew-footed.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Don't play knock-kneed.
Yeah. As Archie Griffin said, a little slew-footed kid from east of Columbus ends up winning 2 Heisman trophies, whereas Nick Saban, said long ago he didn't recruit slew-footed guys because, they had limitations. I go for a running back. That means you can go left or right, really quickly because Keith Byers was slew-footed, but boy, was he good. Hey, let's get to my conversation with Kieran Kumar real quick. And I want to come back and ask you one more thing before we're done here. But ladies and gentlemen, this is Kieran Kumar who's been hired to change the fortunes of Ohio State softball program. Whether she will get it done, hey, the future will only tell that. We'll only give you that answer. But without further ado, let's get to my quick conversation I had with Kieran Kumar back in late summer.
Is when you talk to Commissioner, Athletic Director Bjork, what did he tell you he wanted more than just W's and stuff? What did he tell you, from a program standpoint, he wanted to see different, I guess, from what you've inherited?
I think he wanted to see the passion, right? I do bring enthusiasm, passion, and I know I didn't show that on the podium because, like I said, speeches, things like that. If I speak from the heart, it's different. But if I do that, sometimes I forget things, right? So he wanted that to come. He wants the excitement of Ohio State softball. Everyone knows right now that softball is one of the premier sports in college athletics, especially for women. We got women's basketball. Obviously here, ice hockey, women's ice hockey is tremendous. We want to be like them. So that's what he wants. Yeah, he wants what happened and that the country is talking about softball, talking about Ohio State softball.
Yeah. And you personally, I mean, you may have answered before I walked up here, but is sufficient talent in the state of Ohio to put a, well, like you call a competitive team on the field? And do you think that has been, for want of another term, harvested here in recently?
I think you can get a good core group. I do not at this time think an entire class can be from there, but I do think it can be from the entire region. And when I talk about region, I mean within a tank of gas, right? Yeah. So Buckeye Nation is across the country. It's not just in this area, and that's what's really special. So can you get people who are bought in and do everything that Buckeye Nation wants? And I think you can get that within a tank of gas. If you can't, right? If you can't, then you go outside of that. But being here, you can grab from anywhere. But I do think you get a good core group from the state of Ohio. I don't know if you can do the entire
Yeah, I
team.
didn't mean to put that as limits. I just meant, I was just wondering whether you thought that your predecessor or predecessors have harvested like they should have, I guess.
I think the pitching in Ohio is tremendous. I think great pitchers are leaving the state.
Yeah.
And I would like to keep them here. They should want to put their state school on the map, right? That they should want to do this and say, I took Ohio State to levels it's never been at. And that's what I want to keep those great pitchers here in the state.
Speaking of pitching,
pressure comes all kinds of ways. And when the pressure's on you to deliver as a coach, as it is on Kieran Kumar, it's real, right, Matt?
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, and to make an upgrade, it's Ohio State in any sport is high likelihood that it's going to be a dream type of job, right? Yes. And in many cases, you've maybe reached a certain type of level at some point, and then you just weren't able to sustain success, and you go back down, and then this is like your next chance to like resurrect a program and be that person. And I think Miami of Ohio, great school, great program, but like what an upgrade to like the school in your state, and what Ohio State represents nationally. And so there also does come some pressure, just like we were talking about with the kids, and and I think to find the right individual, and I think we're Ross Bjork doing his job and trying to already like upgrade an already great sports program is such a challenge. And to find someone like her to go take this opportunity will be watched very closely.
Yeah. Hey, last thing I wanted to ask you. We're not going to do this every week. Well, we can do it every week if you want to, because you're flying the plane as much as I am. And by the way, those depths, man, you got to watch them. What's your top 5 this week? I know I'm hitting you sideways with this question because you also coach during the week along with all of your various businesses. But do you have a top? I mean, did Texas show you something, or did Michigan show you something? You understand what I mean? What was more revealing, for example, from that game?
Yes and yes. So my top 5 would be, and again, Georgia clearly number 1. I don't, some Buckeye fans might go, well, how do we drop when we win 56-0? And I think it just has to be, the amount of merit that goes into a highly ranked Texas football team going on the road against a top 10 opponent and beating them the way that they did.
Yeah.
Deserves to be recognized. And again, I would also just say if that was Ohio State at 3 or 4 and we beat a top 10 opponent, we would expect to jump up to number 2 as well. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander, right?
Yes.
So I say Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, Alabama, and then I think a team that may challenge for the SEC is probably Ole Miss. And also, Tennessee with an impressive win as well this past weekend over a kind of a highly ranked opponent. They're right there. So that's my top 5. And I think my evaluation of the Texas-Michigan game, it was your point. It was yes and yes. I think Texas did what I think Texas thought they could do, and Michigan was who we kind of think Michigan is
this year.
This year. And I'm not even gonna get into the whole sign stealing and all that other stuff. I just think any team, and this happens to be our rival, right? Any team that gets 18 dudes drafted or 16 guys, whatever it is,
Yeah.
they're not layered like Ohio State's
There's
layered.
going to be a drop. Yeah.
There's going to be a drop. And again, I'll just say, like, it's, this is a probably one of the biggest knocks against Harbaugh was, not having, how does Michigan not have top 5, top 7, not top 8 recruiting classes year after year, even when you're beating Ohio State and going to the college football playoff and winning the Big Ten championship games? How?
Yeah.
So and it's not that they don't get talent. It's a different type of talent, and that's great. Put them in a box. It's Michigan type of talent. But it's not the Georgia, Ohio State, Bama, Texas, USC, perpetual top 5 recruiting guys. And so I think when that, you work really, really hard to develop, and it all hits, with that talent all one place, one time, like it did for Michigan, along with some signs, right?
Yeah.
Great things happen. Well, those guys are gone now. Your leader's gone now. The voice has changed in that program. And so there's going to be a natural, downtrend. Some, local regional pundits are, expecting it to continue, to do this. They will stabilize, and I don't think that, maybe not at the, 10-2, but 9-win, 8-win, without being, completely biased and one to, say they're only going to win 4 games. I'm not that guy. They're a 7-8 win football team, but they're going to be challenged, in the new Big Ten significantly more so than they have been in the past. And if the whole Connor Stallings things was actually a thing and it's gone now, that competitive advantage and the void of talent and the uptick in talent in the Big Ten because of the new additions will, make this season of Sherrone Moore football at Michigan a little rockier than they're used to.
Yeah. It's interesting too, though. Texas, I give it up to Steve Sarkisian because they went to Michigan, and it was obvious in the first half of that game too. They wanted to make a point that they were going to not just Quinn Ewers the ball around the magician to a certain extent, but they lined up and ran it down their throat a little bit. You understand what I'm saying? Meaning, this is the strength of your team is getting into a fight in a phone booth and winning that fight. Texas won that fight. Now, ladies and gentlemen, a phone booth used to be when I was growing up. It's where if you needed to make a phone call and you were out and about, you had to go and stop and go into a phone booth instead of just reaching or hitting call button on your steering wheel in your car. But phone booth is basically a confined area. And Texas lined up and beat them up front, man. And I mean, that was a moment. Go ahead.
It absolutely was. And I think it's a message for Texas football, not just to Michigan, but I think nationally.
Yeah.
And now Texas in the SEC, changes a lot of things as well. But I did hear, playing both sides in preparation for this football game, a big football game, big noon kickoff, was if Michigan had a chance, they felt like their ability to constrict Texas and that run game and force Quinn Ewers to beat him with his arm. And then they were going to, be with they call it like one of the best secondaries or the best corners in the country, limit what Texas is doing. So it's just funny. Sarkisian took that note and kind of used it against them.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. This is the thing now. Like, Michigan's going to see that when a team comes to town with a big physical offensive line and a great runner and probably a great play caller, they're going to see those same runs and that type of game plan week after week until they stop it. So that's where I will say, that void of talent. Mason Graham's a great player, going to be a first-round draft pick for Michigan, but he needs 6 other guys around him to do that.
Right. And I'll tell you what, man, it was a great example. And this, you played the game. When you've got a quarterback, I'm not saying a quarterback who could just Lamar Jackson just outrun you. When you've got a quarterback who could step up and buy those 2 or 3 extra seconds, like Quinn Ewers did, either on a rollout, scramble rollout, or stepping up into the pocket and then hitting a touchdown pass, that's a killer for a defense. I don't care what kind of defensive personnel you've got, right?
Well, you're absolutely right. And I think that's the other thing that everyone's kind of, Quinn Ewers could have gone pro. That's what you get in Quinn Ewers coming back to Texas.
Savvy.
I was talking with a buddy over the weekend, with Arch Manning, 5-star kid, the Manning last name. Quinn Ewers competitively 2 years in a row has been in an open competition with this young man.
Yeah.
And Quinn Ewers, who was the highest rated college prospect ever in a rating system, right?
Yeah,
Who, of course,
yeah.
Ohio State transferred out. So it's like,
Hey, and he didn't even play his senior year of high school, but go ahead.
right. He's no slouch. So
Yeah.
like to throw him into this fire with this like highly touted recruit the last 2 years and not bat an eye and win that job and come back when he could have gone pro, maybe gone first round, I don't know. Just to develop that also is a testament to what Sarkisian has there in Austin. That's something special. He's got playmakers around him. He'll throw for 4,000 yards and 45 touchdowns and probably be a top 15 pick in the NFL draft, coming off of that. And it's an opportunity to have Texas compete for a national championship,
Right.
which they've kind of dabbled with being very good at times in the last 15 years, but never this good with what's kind of happening there in Austin.
Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Ohio State's definitely not dabbling. Ohio State is definitely in the hunt. I mean, yeah, they haven't played anybody yet, but they have a little bit. They've played teams that have schemed against them, and they've run over them eventually from the get-go against Western Michigan, eventually against Akron. And this is the open date, an off week for Ohio State from the standpoint of not playing a game on Saturday, but with Marshall coming to town. And then the Big Ten steps, it's just a stepping stone, right, Matt? I mean, Akron, Western Michigan, which played a Wisconsin team pretty tough, then an off day week, then a Marshall, which is in the Sun Belt and looks pretty like a decent program, and then Michigan State, which is rebuilding. But Jonathan Smith came there from Oregon State, and we had a really good program last year. And then the trip to Oregon. This is just great. As I talked to Brian Dayapart, this is about gradual steps up, not shoot up.
100%. And I think the other thing that it sets up, just thinking about it, is also like having Oregon not be our first road game.
Yeah.
Which means our bags have got to get packed, our guys have got to travel. They're going to be a heavy favorite most likely in East Lansing, but to go into someone else's territory, someone else's backyard, and have to perform as well and get a little uncomfortable and overcome those things. And I know that
sleep in a hotel the night before and get up early and have breakfast.
All those that you don't think about. Again, we expect them to make it a business trip and do it all professionally, which is all we've seen thus far, and we're veteran laden. But it just keeps setting the table appropriately for that trip out to Oregon.
There you go. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to keep setting the table. Matt and I will be back next week. Even the off week, there's always plenty to talk about. And I think next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about the offense, Matt, and what from your vantage point of being a defensive minded guy, most of your football career, what would trouble you most as a defensive coordinator dealing with that offense, if you follow my drift? So be thinking about that while you're trying to help coach St. Ed's to world prominence on the high school level. And it is, right? I mean, that went over St. Joe's a week ago. That's a big deal, right?
It was a big deal, and we're off and rolling. And yes, we've got a very tough schedule, so it's every week is a challenge. But we're again, those will come for Ohio State. Right now, they're figuring themselves out, and they're off and rolling very, very well so far.
All right, for Matt, this is Tim May. Until next week, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you then.